So on December 9th, Starship took off on its first test hop. This was Starship serial number 8, or SN8 as it is lovingly referred to by SpaceX fans. It was a 50-meter tall stainless steel test rocket made by SpaceX. It took off under the power of 3 methane and oxygen full-flow Raptor engines and ascended to 12.5 kilometers, or 41,000 feet, nearly 8 miles in the sky. Then it proceeded to belly flop back down to Earth. And a couple of interesting things during the flight. They shut off engines as they went up.
Why'd they do that?
So normally when you launch a rocket, you're trying to get to space. So you usually don't shut off any of the rocket engines until you get to space. And one of the interesting things with rockets is that as you go, the rocket gets lighter, but you're still putting out roughly the same amount of thrust. So the speed of acceleration is going to be higher and higher, and you're going to put more stress on the vehicle. So in order to reduce stress on the test rocket, because this wasn't what they were testing, they shut off rockets as they went up.
So wait, why do they shut off the engines as opposed to just throttling them back?
Well, there is a minimum amount of thrust that an engine can put out. And so you can't just throttle it back to almost nothing. You have to kind of shut off the engines. So that's kind of an advantage of having 3, I guess. So next up was the belly flop. And the judges... It was a picture-perfect belly flop. Now, from the camera view that we saw, it looked like some kind of Frank Gehry building falling out of the sky with style. The interesting part is that it was actually steering. So the fins on the side of the rocket were able to control the fall and lead it to the landing pad. Now, this belly flop will eventually be used for re-entry, which is a huge advantage because by having the widest possible configuration for re-entry means that it's going to limit the amount of heat that the rocket actually sees at any one time. And the way it does this is by creating lift. So instead of falling through the atmosphere like a stone, it's going to slow itself down as it falls by kind of acting like a plane, more of a falling plane. And so it kind of uses that lift to slow its descent back down to Earth.
Oh, kind of like the space shuttle used to do.
Kind of, yeah. Now, this slow descent leads to less heating, meaning that the heat shield of the rocket will see less wear and tear, meaning that it will be more reusable. So the next event was the flip, and this is probably the most exciting intentional rocket maneuver since the twin relanding pencil dive of the Falcon Heavy. This maneuver flips the rocket into a landing position where, in this test, the rocket slammed into the landing zone and exploded.
Now, why did that happen?
Well, there wasn't enough pressure in the header tanks.
Pressure in the header tanks? What does that mean?
Let me see if I can try and explain.
Okay.
So here, let me try and explain. This is the rocket. We're using Elon Musk's favorite type of chalice, which is, of course, the mason jar. So when you have a rocket and it's taking off normally, all the fuel is going to be in the bottom of the rocket, right where the engine's going to be, shooting off all that engine juice.
Makes sense.
Now, problem is, when you're doing a belly flop, the fuel is not next to the engine. And so the problem with this is, and this happens in all space missions, even when you're in 0G, imagine the water all floating around in a particular thing, you need to do something to get the fuel to the engine side. So in this case, you have what's called a header tank, which is a smaller tank that you pressurize. This allows you to start the engine, which then pushes everything forward. And in that moment of pushing, you have pushed everything to where you need it to be. And then the rocket flips up and begins its descent like that.
Okay, so what happened?
So there wasn't enough pressure in the header tank of the methane. And this meant that the engine was fuel starved, not oxygen starved, but fuel starved, which meant that the fuel mixture was too oxygen rich and it didn't have enough fuel, so it wasn't creating enough thrust. You also see during the test some green flashes. This was the engine being burned up by the exhaust.
Oh, wow.
Because basically there was so much oxygen in that fuel mixture that it's what's called an engine-rich fuel mixture when you have parts of the engine flying out of the engine itself.
Is that what the green flame is?
Yeah, so we're not exactly sure what happened, but definitely something bad. That's copper being oxidized by the oxygen and being burned and thrown out of the bottom of the engine. Now, this could have been because one of the engines became extinguished, the right engine that you see in the live stream. The left engine then compensates for that, slams into the other engine, or it might have, and the engine bells, the things that you associate with the engine, are actually copper and Inconel. So if it broke, that could be why we're seeing such a big flash of green. And then, of course, it didn't have enough thrust, so it slammed into the deck pretty hard and exploded.
But I want to point out that Elon knew there was a good chance this test wasn't going to go off okay. He even tweeted probably 1/3 chance of completing all mission objectives. So this is a rocket test. It's not meant to be perfect. It's meant to learn.
Exactly. And this was a mostly successful test of Starship. We had the Ascent. We had the longest running of any Raptor engine, which was Raptor number 42, all the way up to the Apogee. And then you had a successful belly flop. It, was able to steer the rocket all the way to the landing pad. The flip worked. Again, it was just the header tanks that was the issue, and that will hopefully be solved in upcoming tests. Now, they did have SN9 almost ready to go, but then it actually tipped over inside the high bay. As we speak, they're currently trying to recover it. But again, they're very good at making rockets pretty fast at SpaceX. So if SN9 doesn't fly, it might be SN10.
Now, what is this post-apocalyptic view that we're seeing here?
So this is Elon walking around the wreckage of the rocket that night.
Wow.
So, after everything, I guess, had cooled down, the engineers went out to investigate what went wrong from the wreckage. And I mean, look at this amazing shot. This looks like something you'd see out of Star Wars.
Yeah.
I mean, all you need to do is add 2 setting suns, a couple TIE fighters screaming across the sky.
And I think this story is really important because the way the mass media portrayed it was that, SpaceX failure. It's not a failure. This is amazing. This is going to lead to us going to other planets and going around our planet on Starship. And this is just the first of many tests that are needed to get us there. So if you want to share this story with your friends and family and tell them that this was a good thing and what actually took place, head on over to our Now You Know Clips channel where we've chopped this into a bite-sized clip that you can share with them.
Hey everybody, thanks so much for watching Now You Know Clips. You can watch full episodes of Tesla Time News on Mondays and in-depths on Fridays. Just click the link down below to head over to the Now You Know channel.